Talking about pictures, I would like to share this photograph with the viewers. This photo, it looks like a single alien who's standing. Maybe he's just standing still. I don't know what's happened. Maybe he wants to connect to humans, or what is it? If you can throw some light, Diego, on this photograph, it's really amazing. I mean, when I saw it for the first time, it was stupendous. So please, if you can share some views, Diego.
You know, when we decided to do this together, and I anticipated you that we have a huge amount of material, photographic and video and audio, and we just chose a little samples just to give our users, your users, a glimpse of how big, of the extent of this Valmalenco files and this amazing investigation that we are living through. This alien, I chose it specifically because it's not, it doesn't belong to the classical grays as we can see in the movies or in some representation, and it's not an interdimensional being like light beings or completely not materialized. This is a hybrid. You can see the physicality of the figure. You can see that the physical is that the body is a half real and half ethereal. These beings, some of the beings that are there, are capable of shifting from one dimension to another, and we believe they're also standing in between two dimensions. That's why they can partially become real, means that it's not that they're not real if they're not visible, means they can become concrete in our reality, meanwhile staying in their own dimension or in another dimension. This is, we believe, it's for a sort of a protection. Let's say, for example, they materialize 50%. This materialization allows them to be visible on cameras, to be invisible to the naked eye, and if someone wants to attack them out of fear, for example, let's think about a policeman or a hunter or someone who is armed, and they want to hurt them, because their body is not fully present in our reality, probably the bullet would not harm them, because their organs or their physiology, it's partly in another dimension. So we believe that this is also kind of a protection. Actually, this was told me by one contactee that it's also my friend, and we had a lot of confrontation about this. And his alien context told him that sometimes they prefer not to be fully materialized, because not because they can't, but because they know that some human can have an unpredictable reaction. So they also need to protect their lives from that. When you ask me the first question, do they have omnipotence? No, they do have limitation. They can be killed, they can die. Once any being come into existence in our reality, they're also bound to the limitation of our reality, so that they need to respect the law of our physics. If they stand in their own dimensions, it doesn't mean that the dimension respects our laws of physics. They have different laws. So in that dimension, they're perfectly safe. So when we see, for example, ghost-like creature or translucent creatures, we have pictures of that. Creatures almost invisible, you can see just the silhouette. They are totally protected. Nobody can harm them. Only force fields, electromagnetic fields, they can harm them, because the electromagnetism, it's something that goes across the matter and can actually, it's one of the technology that is used to shift from one dimension to another. So this alien, why I say this, is because that we have another footage of this alien in a little bit of wider frame, where you can see that on his appearance, to the sides, he has two orbs appearing with him, and the two orbs have a language. One language is a Morse code for love, And another one, he's a kind of a Hebrew characters that stands for God. At least that how it was translated by the contact who actually took the picture. So this being, I chose it so to understand that what are there. There are several kinds of beings, and not all of them fall under categories that we already know. There is so much more to discover.
Mm.
There are a lot of them. They are probably never been classified by any known agency or researchers.
Wow. Wow, this information, Diego, to me, it's coming as if, I'm actually watching a film and you're actually saying what can happen in a movie. The portals that they show in the movies, would that be a possibility when you say that they're half in our dimension and maybe other half of them is in a different dimension? The portal through which they enter a universe, and then they can, if they feel there is a certain kind of fear from humans or some species, they might just go back in that portal and go back to their own universe. Would that be a
Absolutely.
possibility?
Absolutely. And that's exactly what happens if they feel threatened or they feel in danger, they simply vanish. They vanish means that they can, exactly like you said, they have doors. They go beyond the door, and that door goes to the dimension they come from or they can access, and they simply are out. Out of our reality doesn't mean that they are not existing anymore. They simply shift the laws, the set of laws that govern that dimension rather than ours. But they can still be there, consciously speaking. And that's another thing very complicated that we also need to understand. The consciousness and the body can be two distinct things. We can have these beings shifting dimensions physically, but the consciousness, they can be aware of still being here. And that's another very
Wow.
complicated things that we're still studying.
Wow. That's amazing. It's really amusing. Seriously, Diego. Okay, Shomo, you have any thoughts on that, or you can go on with your question?
Yeah, I actually even I felt I was watching a movie. When he said that when they face any human interaction and some maybe a human trying to attack them, they just flee. They just disappear from our presence. It does not mean that they've gone completely from the surface of the earth, but they've gone from the presence. I just wanted to know that I've seen so many movies of aliens wherein they kind of sometimes attack human beings. So over here, the areas that we are talking about, yeah, do they anytime attack on the mode of self-defense, or they just flee when they find danger?
Except from some files from the 80s compiled by a former, I believe it was intelligence officer that talked about some attacks from aliens in America. I never had any experience or reports about some aggression from the aliens towards civilians or humans. And especially in the Valmalenco area, where these beings seems to be quite frequently sighted or interacting with them. We've never heard about such a threatening uh, act on the part of the beings. Uh, we have heard of one girl a few years ago who she was driving back home after work, and it was night, and the streets there can be pretty narrow and a lot of twisted inside the woods, like mountain terrain. It's not easy to see. I think there was also some mist, fog, and it was not a good visibility. Basically, she ran over one animal. She thought it was an animal like a deer. It jumped, this animal, this object jumped out of the woods into the road, and she just slammed it and ran it over. So she stopped to see if it was quite big, but not too big. So she stopped. She thought it was an animal. She was sorry, so she wanted to see if it was still alive. And when she jumped out of the car and went observing what she had hit, she saw this little gray alien figure with the big head dead under her car. And she fell in such a shock that she couldn't be able to talk for several weeks after that incident. Eventually, the authorities were called, she found the courage to speak on the phone and call for police. The police arrived. They sent someone from Milan, from the biggest city nearby. Actually, it's about 3-4 hours driving, but all the way from Milan, some people, like they called it rescuing people, came. They bagged up this creature into a plastic bag and they brought it to a lab in Milan, and nobody has ever heard anything about him anymore. This girl is still there. We tried several times to approach her. We know who she is. We actually talked to her, but she refuses absolutely to talk about that episode. She confessed something to a close friend of her, which we talked to, and she told us that she's still, after several years, she's still under deep shock. So what she saw there was totally unearthly, totally that she could never recognize as belonging to this planet, or nothing that she had ever seen. Okay, so we had this incident a couple of times that there is such a dramatic event, but we never had any. Usually, Shuomo, what happens is that if there is an unexpected encounter and the creature doesn't want that, they simply disappear. They can be really fast, and they possess technology to, you will see later in another picture that Abhishek will show us, that they have teleportation, they have light beams that can just suck them up in the sky. So I mean, they prefer to leave rather than be physically confronted with humans. They avoid that.
That's great. That's really nice. Yeah.